The mind as a sacred field and the gentle invitation to return to your goodness. Imagine for a moment that every thought passing through your mind is like a stream of water sinking into the ground. It does not disappear. It flows quietly, and one day it returns either as a clear spring or a muddy puddle, depending on what you once poured into it. As I observe human life, I realize that no thought is harmless. No word fades without leaving a trace. Every emotion, every image, every whisper in the heart is a hidden current finding its way back. It is the quiet law of life, a law that shows no favoritism. Everything returns. Years ago, I thought the mind was just a place where thoughts were stored. But then I learned that it is more like a sacred field than any land in this world. In that field, good seeds can take root and grow into peace, meaning, and direction. In that same field, seeds of fear can turn into anxiety, conflict, and exhaustion if we fail to notice them in time. And I realized something simple that changed me completely. You and I are not victims of life. We are the ones quietly guiding the flow. I have met many people walking through life with heavy hearts. They say they are exhausted by work, disappointed by family, confused about the future. They think everything that happens is random or caused by others. But when they begin to recognize the stream they have been pouring into their minds for many years, they slowly understand that life is not betraying them. It is simply returning what they unknowingly placed inside, not as punishment, not as a harsh destiny, but as a gentle principle of the universe. Whatever you send out in thought will find its way back in a form that matches it. And you know this does not frighten me. On the contrary, it brings a quiet kind of freedom, because if life is a reflection of the mind, then the moment change begins within, the world around you will slowly change in color. Your mind is not a wasteland. It is a kingdom waiting to be reclaimed. A place where goodness can speak, can shine, can guide, if you allow it to rise. Today, I invite you to walk this path with me. A path not to escape life, but to see it with new eyes. A path to help you understand that peace is not a miracle, but the natural fruit of what you plant in silence. And right now, as you sit here listening, the door to the kingdom of goodness in you is opening very gently. You only need to step in. Goodness, as the quiet pulse of the universe, not a moral rule. Since ancient times, humans have tried to explain why life moves the way it does. Many generations believed that good and evil were two equal forces, like two armies in an endless battle. But when we look deeper into the nature of life, we discover something very different. Goodness is not a moral choice and not a fragile emotion. Goodness is the foundational pulse of the universe, the original current that shapes every order and every law and every form. Goodness does not need proof. It is like the warmth of the sun, the sprouting of a seed, the growth of a leaf. It has always been there. Evil, on the other hand, is not an opposing force. It has no real substance, no independent origin, no true existence of its own. It is like the static you hear when a radio slips off its frequency. The broadcast is still there, the message is still whole, but the receiver is misaligned. This does not erase the broadcast. It only distorts what the listener hears. In other words, evil is not a real entity. It is the distortion, the misunderstanding, the expression of a mind turned away from its original light. When people look at life through fear, they see evil as something big. When they look through clarity, it fades like mist under the morning sun. Not because they pretend evil is not real, but because evil has never existed as a true opposing force. Goodness is the original frequency. Everything else is a deviation from it. We can see this clearly in nature. Imagine a forest filled with sunlight. Trees grow strong, streams run clear, the air is fresh. But if a thick cloud covers it for too long, the forest becomes cold, and damp plants weaken, and everything feels dim. Many things in the forest change, but the sun itself remains the same. It still shines just as it always has. The lack of light is only the result of a barrier, not proof that the sun disappeared. Goodness is like the sun. It is never absent. It is only hidden when the mind turns away. This is why some people remain peaceful, even in hardship, while others feel empty, even in comfort. The difference is not in their circumstances, but in the direction of their mind. A mind trained to see lack will always find lack. A mind aligned with goodness will notice goodness even before life changes. The mind, not the outside world, is where every cause begins. Those who feel overwhelmed by pressure, broken families, or chaotic work often believe they are victims of their situation. But when they return to this principle, they begin to see that life is not a battle between good and evil. Life is the flow of goodness, and every fear is only a passing cloud covering the light. No cloud lasts forever, and no mind is unable to turn back to the original light. When we understand goodness as the foundational law, we stop feeling lost in our troubles. We stop asking why something bad happened to us, and instead ask where our mind has drifted. This question does not make us feel guilty. It brings us back to the natural power every person carries within. Because when we know goodness is the original direction of the universe, we also know we can return to it at any moment. There is no need for rituals, vows, or desperate effort. Only a small shift in thought, a subtle change in how we see things, a brief remembering that goodness has never left us. People who are busy, wounded, or tired often find this hard to believe. They say, life has given them too many opposite signs. But those signs, when seen deeply, are only results of moments when the mind was covered for too long. When the light of goodness is blocked, everything becomes dull or dark. But just as a forest cannot die from a few days without sun, the essence of a person cannot disappear after years of losing direction. Goodness is the heartbeat of the soul, and that heartbeat does not stop. When we begin to see goodness as the foundation, life changes quietly. We react less. We defend less. We blame ourselves and others less. We begin to realize that people, even the most difficult ones, do not act from an evil nature, but from fear. And when we see this, we no longer feel attacked by life. We begin to feel like we are learning something. At that moment, goodness starts to move again. Before we end this part, I want to ask you a simple question. Are you hearing these words from a place of peace or from a place of worry? Are you opening the door to goodness or still unsure about it? Either answer is fine. But thank you, truly thank you, for still being here, still listening, still wanting to find a direction of light for yourself. That alone shows that the goodness in you has never gone out. It has only been waiting for you to return. Evil as a shadow, cast in the wrong direction, disappearing. When the mind turns back to light, there is a truth many people only realize after walking through enough exhaustion in life. What we call evil has no power of its own. It has no roots, no independent source, no inner life, as we once believed when we feared it. Evil is like the shadow of an object lit from the wrong angle. If we shift the direction of the light, the shadow changes its shape. If we place the light in the right position, the shadow almost disappears. The real object is still there, but the angle changes the way we feel about it. The inner life works the same way. The things we call evil, hardship, heartbreak, failure, betrayal are only shadows stretched long, because the mind is looking at them from the wrong angle. When the angle is wrong, the shadow grows. When the angle is right, the shadow shrinks. Not because we deny reality, but because we see that these things have no power of their own. To see this more clearly, imagine a lamp placed slightly off to the side of a table. Its light falls on the floor and casts a long, distorted shadow of the vase standing still. If we look at that shadow from a distance, we might think it is something frightening. But it is only the effect of light being misplaced. When we place the lamp in the right direction, the shadow fades without us having to fight it. By that simple change, life shows us that to transform the darkness, we do not need to attack it. We only need to adjust the direction of light in the mind. The human mind has a strange ability. It can enlarge something small into something overwhelming, or soften something heavy into something gentle. This depends entirely on how we define what is happening. Two people facing the same event can live two different lives, simply because the light in their mind is placed in different positions. One sees the event as an accusation. The other sees it as a lesson. The same event, but two very different shadows inside their hearts. Here we begin to see the true nature of what we call evil. It is not a force opposing goodness. It is simply the absence of awareness of goodness. Evil is not reality. It is the distortion of reality. It is like a mirror fogged by vapor, making the reflection unclear. We do not blame the mirror. We only wipe away the mist. When the mind is covered by worry, hurt, assumptions, disappointment, the image we see of life becomes blurred in the same way. On the journey of living, everyone has moments of losing direction. At those moments, we think we see evil. In truth, we are simply standing where the light hits us wrong. Our mind has been placed in a position that magnifies fear. But when we shift our inner position, the air becomes lighter. The world feels less harsh. The people who once hurt us start to make more sense. The situations that once looked impossible suddenly reveal a small path behind them. This is not because life changes that quickly. It is because our sight changes. And when sight changes, our depth changes with it. Many people enter life with a whole heart, but are wounded in ways they did not expect. They go through betrayal, loss, rejection, abandonment, comparison. From these wounds, they build thick walls. They think the walls protect them, but those walls create even longer shadows and make the world look like an enemy instead of a companion. Every attempt to protect themselves pushes the inner light further from its true place, and the shadow stretches even more. When we understand this principle, we begin to shift the light back. We learn to look at things not only through emotion, but through a deeper stillness. We begin to ask whether what we fear is real, or only the shadow of an old memory, whether what we are seeing is the truth, or just a distorted image created by a tired mind. When these questions arise, the darkness begins to shrink, not because we force it to, but because light has returned to its rightful place. We no longer resist or fight or drown in the fear that has repeated for years. We stand upright and see everything with warmer, softer, steadier eyes. And the miracle is this: When we change our way of looking, people also slowly change the way they respond to us. Not because they transform instantly, but because we no longer carry the vibrations that feed the old shadow. It is like entering a dark room and turning on a light. We do not fight the darkness. We simply light the space. That alone changes everything. On this path, what matters is not defeating the darkness, but realizing it was never as real as we believe. It is only a sign that our inner light needs adjusting. When we understand this, life becomes gentler. The people who once frightened us become small shadows of the past. The situations that once drained us become pages already turned. Light does not need to win. It only needs to appear. Goodness is the same. When the mind returns to the right direction, every distortion heals on its own. Not because we are stronger than it, but because it was never as solid as we assumed. And from that moment, we begin to live lighter. Because we know that darkness is only a sign, and the direction of light is the place we belong. Thought, as the material that builds life and the quiet responsibility each person carries there, is a truth very few people ever pause to consider, even though it is at work every hour of their life. Thought is not a passing state of the mind. Thought is material. It is foundation. It is the earliest form of everything that later appears as work, health, finances, relationships, or the way we feel about ourselves. Every outer circumstance is only the late stage of an invisible cause planted months or years earlier in the mind. And because this cause is invisible, people often assume there is no link between what they think and what they live. But the way life works is much simpler. It is like a garden. No one plants cucumber seeds and expects apples. No one plants weeds and hopes for roses. And no one waters their soil with worry, resentment, judgment, and then wonders why life grows heavy results. Thought is the seed. Thought is the root. Thought is the thread from which everything slowly takes form. When this becomes clear, we no longer treat thoughts as meaningless waves coming and going. We understand that every thought, even the smallest one, is a quiet yet powerful influence on the ground of our existence. If a person constantly thinks about lack, they do not only see lack in the world, they feel lack even when they have enough. If a person feeds doubt, they do not only doubt others, they slowly lose the ability to trust themselves. And if a person lets fear cover everything, they not only see the world as threatening, they shrink inside their own invisible boundaries. Emmet Fox often said that wanting good is not a moral choice, but an intelligent choice of vibration. A person who wants peace cannot continue sowing thoughts of unrest. A person who wants an open life cannot keep thinking in narrow patterns. A person who wants love cannot build walls inside their own heart. Thought creates vibration. Vibration creates circumstance. And circumstance is only the natural outcome of a process that began where no one could see it. This does not mean people are to blame for their suffering. It simply shows something important. The path out of exhaustion begins with looking at what has been planted in silence. Not with self-blame, but with gentle honesty. Because looking is the first step of freedom. Only when we recognize the old material can we place new material on top of it. When we understand thought as the material that builds life, we notice another truth. Our real responsibility is not to control the world, but to care for the stream of thoughts within. A person can spend their whole life trying to control others, trying to make them change, trying to fight circumstances. But no lasting change begins from the outside. One small decision, one quiet thought in the right direction has more power than 100 forced actions. Life does not punish, it only responds, and its response is always honest and without bias. It returns exactly the material we used to build with. If we fill our days with resentment, life will respond with situations that deepen resentment. If we fill our days with peace, peace will become the natural environment we walk in. If we fill our days with trust, gentle doors will open that we once could not see. That is why every person has a silent choice. No one can decide for us what we should think, and no one can take away our ability to rebuild life with better material. Even if the past held dark periods, the mind still holds the power to turn toward light. Because everything begins from thought. Another important thing to remember is that thought does not always appear in words. There are patterns we repeat so many times that they become our default tone. A person who is used to worrying thinks it is simply their personality. But it is only a habit reinforced through years. A person who believes they are unworthy does not realize they are silently sending signals that invite others to treat them that way. A person who is used to judging does not understand why life keeps bringing situations that make them feel dissatisfied. These patterns are not destiny. They are only old thought habits. And every old pattern can be changed by one new decision. To do this, we do not need to exert extreme effort. We only need to begin with awareness, with noticing the material we are using each day, with pausing in the middle of a familiar thought and asking whether it is building or destroying, opening or narrowing, based in light or based in the shadow we talked about earlier. Any answer becomes a map. Right thought strengthens life. Wrong thought weakens it. And fortunately, everyone has the ability to redirect their thoughts at any moment they truly choose. Life is built one thought at a time. And when we understand this, great change begins with very small steps, with the way we speak to ourselves, the way we look at others, the way we name what is happening, the way we choose light instead of the shadow. And when we care for our thoughts, the way a gardener cares for the soil, life responds with good seasons we once never believed we could deserve. The illusion of evil and the difference between sin and a mistaken thought. When people suffer, they often believe that something dark and mysterious is working against them. They name it fate or karma or punishment or some hidden force in the universe. But when we look closely at the nature of these experiences, we begin to understand that most of what we call evil is only the result of a wrong idea held for too long in the mind. It is not a separate entity. It is only a distorted shape of thought, just as darkness has no life of its own, but appears when light is blocked. Like the shadow in the earlier chapter, this part goes deeper. That shadow not only frightens us, it also makes us misunderstand ourselves. We think we are smaller than we are. We think we are powerless. We think we have no right to return to the light. But these illusions exist only when we are not quiet enough to see the real cause. Take a simple example. A small family full of love in the beginning. Then, one day, a gentle complaint is misunderstood, and the father becomes silent. That silence stretches into years and becomes distance. Holidays turn awkward. Each person believes the others no longer care. From one small misunderstanding, they build a long story about betrayal and pain and feeling unimportant. Then other problems begin. Health declines. Money becomes tight. Arguments appear without clear reason and grow into habit. Outsiders think this family is under some dark fate. But everything began with one wrong image kept alive too long. One idea of separation grew into a whole atmosphere. And the strange thing is that no one chose this on purpose. It happened simply because no one stopped to ask whether what they believed about each other was true, or only the shadow of fear, pride, or old wounds. When we understand this, we see that evil has no power to defeat anyone. It only needs our agreement to continue. Evil cannot stand on its own. It is fed by repeated wrong thoughts. When we stop giving it energy, it shrinks like a cloud thinning under sunlight. This brings us to an important distinction. Many people have never been taught the difference between sin and a mistake in thought. Sin, in many old traditions, is tied to judgment and fear, and the idea of a force outside recording everything to punish us. This idea makes people fear instead of grow. It makes them hide their pain, hide their failures, hide the parts of themselves that need healing. Sin creates distance. Sin creates shame. Sin leaves people awake in the dark, unable to ask for a little light. But in the principle of spirit clearly explained by Emmet Fox, most of what we call sin is simply a wrong direction in thought, a mistaken idea, a belief lacking clarity, an old fear wearing a new shape. And the most important thing is this: a mistaken thought can be corrected. It does not damage our true nature. It does not destroy the soul. It only covers the light temporarily. When someone believes they are not worthy, they hear every word around them through the filter of low value. When someone believes the world is dangerous, they feel threatened even in normal situations. When someone believes they are abandoned, they look for proof of abandonment, even when the facts say otherwise. And when someone believes evil is winning, they unknowingly feed the very shadow they fear. But here lies the good news. Every wrong belief can be replaced. One shift in understanding, one gentle adjustment in perception, one honest moment saying, "Maybe I misunderstood," and life immediately changes direction. No one is punished for a mistaken thought. The spiritual law does not know judgment. It only knows correspondence. What you think and feel and believe is what you meet again in life. Not as revenge, but as a gentle lesson showing you what you have been planting. When you change thought, life changes with you. And the things you once called evil simply reveal how far you drifted and how easily you can return. This leads to a freeing truth. No one is chained to the past. No one is defined by old mistakes. No one is trapped by what they once misunderstood. Yesterday's thoughts cannot hold today's person if they are willing to choose new material. And in the moment this is understood, healing begins. Now, as this part invites, I would like to ask you, the one present here, the one patiently walking this path, to leave a small sign. You can comment, "I am ready to change," or simply the number 1. Either way, thank you for being here. Your presence shows you have already opened a new door in your mind. Forgiveness as the art of releasing the long-forgotten knots within forgiveness is a word used so often that many people believe they already understand it. But in the deeper experience of the inner life, forgiveness is not something we say out loud, nor a noble act we force ourselves to perform to look generous. Forgiveness is a careful process happening inside. It is like loosening a knot that has been pulled too tight through many years. When our hand touches the rope, we realize it is not the rope holding us. It is we who have held it for too long. Some knots are formed from very small things: a careless comment, a poorly timed criticism, a gesture that lacked attention. But because these things were never clarified or understood, they settle like stones at the bottom of a river. Over time, they accumulate, cling to the mind, and turn into what people later call resentment or anger or bitterness or loss of trust. And the saddest part is that most people do not realize they are carrying these stones. Forgiveness is not something we do for others. It is the act of freeing ourselves from the knots that have drained our inner energy for years. Imagine the mind as a bright room. When someone holds resentment, they do not push the other person into darkness. They only pull the curtain down on themselves. The light is still there and still full, but their heart no longer receives it. Resentment distorts vision. Resentment disconnects us from inner guidance. Resentment makes everything feel heavy, even the things that should be light. Not because the other person is powerful, but because the knot inside us has grown too large. When forgiveness has not yet happened, the mind is like a tangled ball of threads. Pull one thread, the whole mass shifts. Try to loosen it, it tightens more. People often think time will heal these wounds. But time does not heal if thought keeps feeding the old memory. It is thought that loosens or tightens the knot. That is why forgiveness is not forgetting, nor erasing, nor pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is looking at the old memory with new understanding, new light, a new angle we could not find on the day we were hurt. One of the most important lessons many people were never taught is this. Forgiveness does not mean accepting someone's wrong behavior. It does not allow them to hurt us again. Forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is withdrawing energy. When we forgive, we stop giving power to their action. We cut the invisible cord between us and that moment. We stop letting the memory shape our present life. Without forgiveness, the other person occupies space in our mind, often larger than those we love most. With forgiveness, we reclaim that space for ourselves. But forgiveness is an art. It does not happen in one sentence. It happens through a process. Here is how that process unfolds within. First, recognize the knot. No need to justify it or determine who was right or wrong. Only acknowledge that something is draining energy inside. This recognition is like realizing we have been carrying a stone in our backpack. Only when we know it is there do we begin to think about taking it out. Second, separate emotion from the event. When we recall an old memory, we are not remembering the event. We are remembering the pain of it. Emotion makes the memory swell and appear larger than it was. But if we observe it as if looking at an old photograph without commentary or added meaning, the knot begins to loosen. Third, rename the true nature of the person. No one acts from an evil nature. People act from fear or confusion or their own wounds. When we begin to see this, not to excuse them, but to understand the source, one layer of heaviness is removed. Fourth, imagine returning energy to its rightful place. Old memories hold our energy. Forgiveness is taking it back. Picture a thin thread connecting you and the person. When you cut that thread with clear intention, the energy flows back into your heart, like water returning to its proper stream. Fifth, affirm liberation. This is not a magic phrase. It is the closing of a door. When we say gently, "I release you from my mind," we are stepping out of a shadow that has lasted too long. Many who practice this process begin to feel lighter. Some sleep deeper. Some no longer flinch when they remember the past. Some see their outer life shift, work becoming less tense, relationships easier, the heart opening. Not a miracle, a law. When frozen energy is released, life begins to move again. A simple example is the man who carried resentment toward his father for many years. The father left when he was young, leaving a space he believed would never be filled. He grew up feeling unloved and thought life was unfair. But one quiet day he realized his father was also a man with fears of his own. He saw clumsiness, not cruelty. In that moment, a knot many years old loosened on its own. No one taught him forgiveness. Understanding itself freed him. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it changes us, and when we change, the past loses authority. Remember this: no soul is born to live in resentment forever. Resentment is not our nature. It is only a place where the mind has become stuck. Forgiveness is the gesture that brings us back to the natural flow of life. When we forgive, we do not just heal an old wound. We open new possibilities for the future. And life, with all its gentle mystery, always responds to the mind that chooses to step into the light. Blessing as a spiritual force, not a polite phrase. There is a common misunderstanding that blessing is only a polite wish, a gentle courtesy, or a simple gesture of kindness. But in the world of thought, a blessing is far more powerful. It is not just a sentence. It is a force, a deliberate shift in vibration, a way of resetting the frequency of the mind. And because life responds to vibration and not to outer words, a true blessing can change the atmosphere of a situation even when no one hears it. A blessing is how we choose to stand in the light even when everything around us feels clouded. And often blessing becomes the small door that opens in the middle of tension we thought could never be eased. Many people think blessing is for happy moments, birthdays, wedding celebrations. But the moments that need blessing most are often the most tiring ones: an unresolved argument, a person who frustrates us, a stressful day, a sadness we cannot name. In those moments, blessing becomes the most active way to protect our inner peace. A blessing does not go toward the other person first. It goes toward our own heart. It reorders the inner world so we are not dragged into lower vibrations. When we say quietly, "I bless you with peace," we are also saying, "I choose peace for myself." Blessing is a double movement toward the other and toward the self, but its real strength lies in the second movement. To understand this, imagine a clear stream. When we place a handful of soil into the water, the stream does not fight it. It simply receives it, blends with it, and carries it away as part of its natural flow until the water becomes clear again. Blessing is that stream. It does not confront tension or judge or strike back or deny emotion. It creates a vibration gentle enough and steady enough to keep us centered. And when the heart stays centered, we begin to see what we could not see before: the true nature of the situation. When we bless someone, we are silently saying, "I see the goodness in you, even if you do not see it in yourself." This is not moral teaching. It is deeper vision, because every person, no matter how they behave, carries a point of light at their center. Blessing is our way of naming that light to remind ourselves it is real and to open a path for the other person if they choose to walk toward it. One of the important spiritual laws is this: we cannot hold two opposite frequencies at the same time. If we are truly blessing someone, we cannot resent them at the same moment. If we are blessing, we cannot hold contempt or anger. Blessing is not an escape from emotion. Blessing is the way we bring the heart back to its strongest state, still and bright. A person who knows how to bless can walk through situations others think are unbearable, not because they are good at enduring hardship, but because they have learned how not to lose themselves in the storm. Someone once walked through a painful divorce. Every day they felt pulled between hurt and the desire to keep their dignity. When they learned to bless not the other person but their own heart, they began to breathe easier. They realized bitterness was hurting them twice. In quiet mornings, they would whisper, "I bless the old path. I bless that person. I bless myself." Slowly, the stone in their chest dissolved. In that act of blessing, they found the part of themselves they thought had been lost. Another person worked in a demanding environment full of competition and misunderstanding. Each day felt like a small battle, but when they began to bless both themselves and those who challenged them not to change others, but to keep their own light, they felt the inner air become lighter. Familiar conflicts no longer stirred them the way they once did. The outer circumstances did not change immediately, but standing in the light allowed them to see everything more gently, and to their surprise, others responded more gently too. Blessing shifts the vibration between people even when no words are spoken. It is important to be clear. Blessing is not pretending. It is not thinking "I wish you happiness" while hoping they disappear from your life. Blessing does not need acting. It needs honesty. Blessing is choosing to stand in goodness, not trying to force someone else to be good. Blessing is keeping the heart open, but not so open that we let others harm us again. It is openness with wisdom, openness with boundaries, openness that protects peace. One of the most beautiful mysteries of blessing is this: the more we bless, the wider our heart becomes. The more we bless, the clearer our sight. The more we bless, the lighter our burdens. Some say blessing is giving away goodness. But in deeper experience, blessing is remembering the true nature of everything. When we remember that goodness is the foundation of life, the heart naturally becomes steady. Blessing requires no special skill. It only requires willingness to stop repeating the old vibrations that caused so much tension. Blessing is the active gesture of someone who understands that life begins in thought, and life will always respond to the thought we choose to hold. If we hold blessing, life will find its way to return blessing to us. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the way we expect, but no vibration of goodness is ever lost. It always finds its way back, and that is why blessing becomes one of the most powerful spiritual acts. It does not change the world to match our wishes. It changes us so we can walk into a brighter world. The law of return: every thought finds its way back to its source. There is a subtle law that many people only understand after life has carried them through enough turning points to make them look inward. Every thought, even the smallest one, eventually returns to the person who released it. Not as reward or punishment, but as the natural completion of a movement. Like an echo in a valley, a thought never disappears into space. It travels outward, touches the shared field of vibration, and then returns to the same frequency that sent it. This is not poetic imagination. It is one of the foundational mechanisms of the inner life. Whatever we send into the unseen atmosphere will find its way back. Not because anyone judges us, not because anyone is watching, not because there is a ledger keeping score. It is simply the natural elasticity of the energetic field we live in. When a person sends out a good thought, goodness returns to them as a soft arc. When they send out the vibration of peace, peace finds a way back in many forms: a gentle conversation, a day with less pressure, an unexpected door opening. And when they send out judgment or suspicion or bitterness, those vibrations return as experiences they did not want. not because life is rewarding or punishing, but because life reflects the energy it receives. People often overvalue words and actions and undervalue thought. They believe their thoughts are private, but thought is never private. Thought is our vibrational signature in the universe, and the universe does not read what we say. The universe reads what we hold. A person may speak kindly, but hold envy in their mind. A person may smile outwardly, but judge inwardly. A person may hide bitterness, yet their mind continues to weave the same images. These thoughts, no matter how concealed, still find their way back and reflect the exact frequency they were created in. This is not meant to make us fear our own thoughts. It is simply a reminder that thought is the creative power we carry whether we are aware of it or not. Whatever we repeat, often enough, will begin to take shape in our life. Some say, "I did nothing wrong. Why do so many unwanted things keep happening?" But the more accurate question is, what have I been thinking again and again without noticing? Because the thought of today may become the experience of months later, and today's experience may be the result of an old belief held for so long that we no longer remember where it began. One of the clearest ways to see the law of return is to observe those who judge often. They believe they are describing others, but in truth, they are sowing a vibration into their own field. That judgment returns as feeling misunderstood, doubted, or criticized. They think the world is unfair, but the world is only returning the image they have sent. On the other hand, those who choose to keep good thoughts do not always have an easy life, but they often have bright eyes, a steady gaze, and a gentle endurance. They face challenges, but not with a scattered heart. Peace inside has changed the way they move through everything. The law of return also teaches us something essential. No thought is harmless. Every thought creates a form. Even fleeting ideas are small touches on the surface of life. Repeated touches create a path. The path becomes a habit. The habit becomes a full picture. But the beautiful part of this law is this: if negative thoughts return, then positive ones return too. If ill will returns, then goodwill returns. If fear returns, then trust returns. Sometimes as a new opportunity, sometimes as unexpected support, sometimes simply as a soft feeling in the chest. No good thought disappears. It always travels back at the right time in the right way. Imagine the mind as a still lake. Every thought is a pebble falling into the water. It creates ripples. Those ripples move outward, then touch the shore, then travel back. The lake never forgets the path of the pebble, and life never forgets the path of thought. People often look for justice outside. They want to see the wrong suffer and the good be rewarded. But spiritual justice does not work that way. It works quietly but precisely. It is not moved by emotion. It does not lose direction. It returns only the essence of what was sent, neither early nor late. Understanding this, we no longer need revenge or the urge to control outcomes. We only need to return to caring for our thoughts. Thought is the only thing we truly have the power to choose. And when we change thought, nothing in life can remain the same. The law of return does not ask who deserves what. It only asks, what are you sending? What do you want to see return? When this question is answered with deep honesty, we stop feeling like victims of circumstance and begin to feel like the creators of our life. And one day we realize every good thing we ever sent into the world, even in silence, even unnoticed, has already begun its journey back in the form of a peace no one can take away. Seeing the light in every person, looking within instead of looking at the surface on the deepest inner journeys. The hardest task is not forgiving others. The hardest task is seeing the good in them, even when they are acting wrongly. When people carry layers of old wounds, they can say hurtful things, behave in confusing ways, and create distances they themselves do not know how to repair. If we look only at the outer behavior, we will believe that is who they truly are. But behavior is the shallowest layer of a human being. Essence lies deeper, and it is always brighter. The light in each person is like a candle placed behind frosted glass. The candle never goes out, but the glass can become dusty, smoky, or scratched over the years. When we look at the glass, we can hardly see the flame behind it. And if we do not understand this, we will think the light is gone. But it never left. It is only covered. At different moments in life, we meet people whose outer behavior shows nothing of that light. Some are harsh, some negative, some so cold that they make others feel lost. But inside them a point of light still exists, a gentle part that has never been destroyed. They simply no longer know how to let it come through. This is especially true for those who have suffered long. When the heart is wounded, they cannot orient themselves toward inner light. They react instead of connect. They close instead of open. They attack instead of expressing what they truly need. But when we look at them with a bright eye, with the awareness that their essence is good, we see that behind the covering is a soul tired, lost, longing for a gaze soft enough to remind them of themselves. Seeing the light in others is not naive. It is the act of someone who understands that every soul comes from the same source, even though each path is different. When we look with a bright eye, we do not deny wrong behavior. We simply do not let that behavior hide the true nature. And this way of seeing is a quiet form of blessing. There are real stories that show this. A mother had a teenage son who became rebellious, withdrawn, and easily angered. On the surface, he was a mess. But instead of defining him by his temporary actions, the mother held on to the image of the gentle child she knew. She did not ignore his mistakes, but she did not label him either. She looked through the smoke of a confused adolescence, and that very gaze helped him find his way again. Not because he was forced, but because someone finally saw him, not with fear, but with light. This is true not only in family, but in every relationship, colleagues, friends, even strangers. When we see the light in others, we give them a chance to return to the best part of themselves. But more importantly, we lift our own vibration. Whoever sees with bright eyes carries a bright heart. Whoever sees with calm carries spacious energy. Whoever sees the light in others cannot sink into fear or resentment for long. Seeing the light in others is also a way of seeing ourselves. Because what we name in others, we awaken in ourselves. When we see goodness in them, we nourish goodness in us. When we see light in them, we strengthen light in us. This is not magic. It is correspondence. The heart can only recognize what it already contains. But how do we see the light in someone who is too difficult, too negative, or too hurtful? The answer is not in changing them. The answer is in changing the position of our inner light. When we stand in defense, we see only shadows. When we shift slightly toward peace, we see a faint glow. When we stand in awareness, we see the real flame. Imagine holding a flashlight in a dark room. The shadow on the wall looks large and frightening. But when you bring the light closer to the real object, the shadow instantly shrinks. The essence did not change. Only the light moved. So seeing the light in others is not forcing ourselves to believe. It is adjusting the light within so we can see the deeper layer of who they are. The truth is, no one is bad at the core. People simply have layers of pain that have not been healed. And when we see their light, even for a moment, we plant a seed of restoration for them and for ourselves. Before we close this chapter, I want to ask you a gentle question in the spirit of this journey. Is there someone in your life you have only seen through anger, but now with a calmer heart you can recognize that there is still a small light in them? You may share an initial or simply nod with a word if you wish. Thank you truly for staying here, for opening your heart to look deeper at yourself and at those who have touched your life. This alone is a sign that your own light is growing stronger. Seeing my enemy as the quiet teacher of my own soul for many years at the beginning of my inner journey, I believed that those who hurt me were obstacles or tests or the result of some mysterious destiny. But the deeper I went, the clearer one truth became. No one enters my life by accident. Every person plays a role, and sometimes the hardest roles bring the strongest lessons. That was the day I began calling my enemy by a different name, the quiet teacher. I do not say this to be poetic or to comfort myself. I say it because I lived it. Some people came into my life and made me doubt my worth. Some pushed me to the edge of what I could endure. Some triggered the darkest places in me, the ones I had avoided for years. They made me lose direction, collapse, even feel ashamed of my own reactions. And in those moments, I blamed them. I wished they would disappear. But one day I stopped and asked a question that became a key that opened the greatest door in my awareness. What inside me reacted to their presence? When I asked that, I saw that the long shadow I thought they created was really the shadow cast by a wound inside me that I had never healed. They were not the source of my pain. They only touched the place I tried to forget. From that moment, everything changed. The person who angered me was touching the part of me that did not know how to stay in peace. The person who made me feel small was showing me the places I had not learned to look at myself with kindness. The person who betrayed me was highlighting the place where I placed too much expectation on the outside instead of my inner light. The person who ignored me was teaching me how to stand strong from my own spiritual strength. Every enemy is a mirror, and a mirror never hurts us. It only shows us what we have been unwilling to see. I remember a time when an old friend turned away from me at a moment I needed him most. I carried the feeling of abandonment for months. But when I sat quietly, I realized the real pain did not come from his action. It came from an old memory of a child who feared being forgotten. He only knocked on the door I had locked for years. He did not create the emptiness. He only revealed it. When I saw that something strange happened, I could not stay angry at him. I understood he was standing exactly where he needed to be to teach me what I had to learn. And when I released my judgment, the lesson became clear. I needed to return to my own value instead of trying to find it in anyone's presence or absence. There were times I met people who felt threatening. Their reactions were sharp, their words cold, their eyes unreadable. I used to think they were dangerous. But as I grew quieter inside, I saw they carried a fear I once carried too, only expressed differently. I hid mine. They attacked with theirs. When I recognized this, I no longer wanted to win against them. I wanted to understand. And when I understood, every tension dissolved. Enemies made me see the image I had created of myself. They exposed old beliefs, old wounds, old reactions I never wanted to face. Without them, many parts of me would have remained in the dark. Someone once told me if no one makes you uncomfortable, how will you know where you are, not yet bright? And I found that truth so deep I could not argue. Those who make me feel warm teach me love. Those who hurt me teach me wisdom. Both are equally important. When I understood this, I stopped seeing anyone as an enemy. I saw them as people arriving at the perfect moment to reflect something in me that needed healing or release or was ready to grow into a higher awareness. This does not mean I have to stay close to them or accept their wrong behavior. No. The lesson does not require blind endurance. The lesson only requires seeing. When I see, I am no longer trapped. When I see, I no longer let them define me. When I see, I move through the lesson instead of being locked inside it. I stopped asking, why did they treat me like this? I began asking, what are they showing me about myself? And when the question changed, the whole world changed. I also learned that once I see the lesson, the quiet teacher leaves. They no longer need to stay. Their role is complete. They were only there to guide me to a door. When I walk through it, their part in my story ends. Over the years, I have experienced enough resistance, disagreement, misunderstanding, and distance. But looking back, I see that every one of them brought me closer to my brightest self. No one took anything from me. They only removed the dust covering it. And I know this is true for you too. No one enters your life without a message. No one hurts you without revealing a place waiting to be healed. No one stands against you without showing you where you have been standing against yourself. The day I understood this, my heart became lighter. I no longer needed others to be perfect. I no longer needed to always be right. I just needed to learn. And when learning became my intention, every enemy became a teacher. And I'm grateful to them in a very quiet way. Thought as subtle matter, everything we think seeks a way to become form. Through years of exploring the nature of the inner life, I discovered a truth that becomes clearer the more closely I watch it. Thought is the finest matter in the universe. It cannot be seen with the eyes or touched with the hands, yet it is the foundation of everything that becomes visible. What we call reality is only the late stage of thought that has been held long enough to crystallize into experience. People often believe that things take shape because of action. But action is the final chapter. Thought is the first page. Without thought, there is no emotion. Without emotion, there is no action. Without action, there is no result. So everything we are living, whether good or difficult, once lived quietly in our mind before it appeared in our life. When we understand this, we stop seeing events as accidents or destiny. We realize that thought went first. Thought is the silent architect of our entire life. Imagine the mind as an invisible workshop. Every thought is a carving stroke. A touch of trust creates a soft curve. A touch of fear forms a tiny crack. A long-held belief shapes an entire structure. A repeated worry roughens the surface. And what we experience each day is simply the statue formed by those subtle touches. Some say, I never wanted this. I did not think anything bad. But what matters is not the fleeting thoughts. What matters are the repeated ones. The shape of our life is not decided by what we think once, but by what we think every day without noticing. Our familiar thoughts, even the silent ones, are the true force behind every outcome. A person living in anxiety does not need to think of bad things directly, but by allowing anxiety to color their inner world day after day, they maintain a frequency that keeps returning to them through situations that trigger more anxiety. There is no punishment, There is no unfairness. There is only correspondence. In the realm of health, this is also true. I have met people who suffered mysterious symptoms for years. When they learned to look at their thought patterns, they discovered they had lived in fear, self-blame, and tension for too long. The body was simply responding to the call of the mind. And the strange thing is that when they changed their thought not through blind hope, but through gentleness and trust, the symptoms slowly ease. In relationships, the same law applies. When someone believes they are unworthy, they behave like someone unworthy and draw people who reflect that belief. Not because the world is against them, but because the world returns the image they carry. In work and finances too, someone who thinks they always lack will find evidence of lack. Someone who thinks opportunity is rare will see more closed doors than open ones. Someone who thinks they are limited will walk within the narrow frame they built themselves. Thought is subtle matter. It always seeks to become a form that matches itself. But the beautiful part of this truth is this. Because thought creates form, one new thought, steady, gentle, bright, is enough to shift the entire direction of life. We do not need to blame ourselves for past thinking. We only need to begin replanting. One good thought, repeated enough, becomes a good emotion. A good emotion, repeated enough, becomes a good action. A good action, repeated enough, becomes a habit. And a good habit held long enough becomes a circumstance. None of us is trapped by old thought. Every day is an opening. Every moment is a small beginning. We can change our life by changing the stream of thought moving through the mind. The most important thing is not to control every thought, but to guide the general direction of thought. We only need to place our hand gently on the wheel and turn it toward the light. No force. No complicated rituals. Only honesty. I choose thoughts that lead me to peace. When that choice becomes a habit, life changes without noise. There is a spiritual law that has always comforted me. No good thought is ever lost. However small or insignificant it seems, it leaves an imprint in the energy field around you. It helps reshape your life from within. And today, as you listen to these words, it means your mind is opening to a new shape for your life. Before we close this chapter, I invite you to leave a small sign as this journey suggests. If you feel your thoughts becoming brighter or lighter, or if you are simply ready to change the material of your inner world, you may comment, "I choose to plant the light," or simply the number 1 to show you are still walking with me. Thank you, truly, for stepping into the light of your own being. Living in the stream of blessing, when goodness becomes the natural rhythm of the mind, when people begin to understand that thought is the foundation of their entire life, they often believe the next step is to control every thought. But that is neither necessary nor possible. The mind has its own natural movement. Thoughts rise and fall like small waves on the surface of the sea. What matters is not following every wave, but understanding the direction of the tide. Whatever direction we allow the mind to flow toward becomes the inner climate of our life. Living in the stream of blessing is choosing a new inner climate, the climate of goodness, gentleness, clarity, gratitude, and unconditional peace. Not only on easy days, but also in the midst of upheaval. Not because life is always simple, but because the inner world has found a steadier foundation than circumstance. When blessing becomes the natural rhythm of the mind, we enter a different state. We stop reacting out of habit and become the one who guides the flow of our own thinking. To live in the stream of blessing, the first step is recognizing the moments we drift away from it. Not to blame ourselves, but to return in time. A burst of anger, a quiet judgment, a sudden fear, these are signs that the mind has shifted away from its natural bright frequency. They are not sin, they are signals, and when we treat them as signals, we no longer panic when they appear. We simply redirect. The second step is nourishing thoughts that stabilize the inner world. These thoughts do not need to be profound. Sometimes they are as simple as whispering within "everything will settle," or "I have enough peace to walk through this," or "goodness is working in me." Gentle words like these, repeated often, become cool water on the heart. They do not force life into shape. They shape the inner state, and the inner state will eventually shape life. The third step is keeping a small space each day for stillness. Stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is the moment the mind returns to its natural balance. In this quiet, we do not try to think, solve, or create positive emotion. We simply stop. And when we stop, the lower vibrations fall on their own. The mind is like a lake. When we stop stirring, it becomes clear. The fourth step is letting gratitude become a soft background music of the heart. Not loud declarations, but a quiet awareness that we are being supported in many invisible ways: a deeper breath, a lighter morning, someone who listens at the right moment, a day when trouble does not become overwhelming. As we notice these small things, we realize the stream of blessing has never disappeared. It was simply waiting for our attention. The fifth step is understanding that true protection does not come from outer walls, but from inner brightness. A bright mind is not a mind without challenges. It is a mind that does not let challenges extinguish its light. When we stand in that light, we move through circumstances with a steadiness others cannot explain. This is not willpower. It is the fruit of living long enough in the stream of blessing to know we never walk alone. Some think living in blessing is blind optimism, but in truth, it is the highest form of clarity. When we live in blessing, we see the essence of things instead of their surface. We understand that behind each discomfort is a reminder. Behind each disruption is an adjustment. Behind each obstacle is a new level of light. Not because life is straight, but because our mind has learned to read the quiet messages hidden in every movement of life. Once we live long enough in this frequency, something beautiful happens. Blessing becomes a reflex. Like breathing, like heartbeat, like steps taken without effort. We no longer try to bless. Blessing becomes our way of seeing, thinking, and feeling. It becomes the natural environment the mind chooses to stay in. Those who live in the stream of blessing are not perfect. They are simply the ones who know how to return to the light whenever they drift a little. And because of that, they carry a peace that is not easily shaken. They remain steady in storms others find unbearable. They remain gentle in pressures others find heavy. They remain generous even in disagreement, and they remain strong in a very quiet way. The beautiful truth is this: anyone can live in the stream of blessing. No special experience is needed, no advanced knowledge, no complex formula. Only a willingness to choose goodness, choose light, choose peace, even for a moment. Every small choice is one drop added to the stream. And one day that stream becomes a river. And then our life, without noise or force, begins to move in the direction we quietly chose. When peace becomes the home we return to, there was a time in my life when I thought peace was a reward given to those who survived enough storms. But the longer I live, the clearer it becomes that peace is not waiting at the end of the road. Peace is the home, and home is always there, even when we wander far, even when we lose our way, even when we forget the path back. Peace is not a destination. It is where we have always belonged. In my younger years, I looked for peace through achievement. I believed that when I reached something greater, I would feel less insecure. But every achievement brought a new kind of pressure. Then I thought peace lived in the affection of others. But human affection has its seasons, warm at times and distant at others. I then tried to find peace by controlling circumstances. But life holds 1,000 things outside our reach. Much later, I realized peace cannot come from outside because peace is not created by circumstances. Peace is a space inside us, but it only opens when the mind becomes quiet enough. It is like the still water at the bottom of a lake, always flat, always bright, hidden only by the movement on the surface. When we stop struggling, that stillness appears. Whenever we feel unsettled, it does not mean peace has disappeared. It only means we are standing in the wrong corner of our own mind, in the corner of noise, fear, and reaction. And all it takes is one small step inward to find ourselves home again. That step is small but powerful. It may be the moment we breathe slowly instead of replying quickly to a painful word. The moment we realize we are overinterpreting and decide to pause. The moment we choose trust instead of letting fear pull us. The moment we remember that every storm is temporary but peace is not. These quiet, humble moments are the pathway back to the home of peace. I once met a woman who lived many years under the weight of a tense marriage. Outwardly, she kept a smile, but inside was chaos. She tried to fix her husband, fix circumstances, even fix herself in exhausting ways. One day she stopped and said something simple. "I am too tired. I want peace more than I want to win." The moment she said that, something shifted inside. Not because life changed, but because she stepped back. She chose inner calm before any solution. And what happened next was not a miracle, but a natural result. As her mind softened, her voice softened. As she softened, her husband stopped reacting so harshly. With fewer daily battles, the home could breathe. The rhythm slowed. Not perfect, but less tight. Not bright, but warmer. Peace does not fix people. Peace changes the atmosphere around us. A man I met had a different story. He was successful and respected, but always empty. He chased excitement, new jobs, new goals, but the emptiness stayed. Only when he sat down one afternoon and admitted, "I do not know why I feel unsettled," even when I lacked nothing, did healing begin. Sometimes admitting we are lost is the first light that guides us home. Peace does not ask us to be perfect. Peace only asks us to be honest with ourselves. Sometimes peace arrives as a deep breath on a tired day. Sometimes peace arrives as a gentle letting go. Sometimes peace arrives as a quiet pause between two pressures. Sometimes peace arrives when we trust that everything has its own rhythm, neither faster nor slower than it needs to be. When we live close to this rhythm, the mind adjusts itself. We stop forcing everything to bend to our will. We simply follow the movement of inner clarity. I realized something. Peace never leaves us. We leave it. And we leave it every time we identify with fear, worry, judgment, or haste. But the beautiful truth is this. Peace does not blame us for leaving. It stays still waiting for us to return. No anger, no demands, no need for proof. Peace is always open, When we understand this, we stop seeking peace in praise. We stop seeking peace in reassurance. We stop seeking peace in success or recognition. We begin to look for peace where it truly is, in the quiet awareness within. And when peace becomes the home we choose to return to each day, we step into life with a completely different energy. We stop speaking harshly when tired. We stop overacting to small things. We stop carrying old stories. We stop letting the future pull us away from the present. We become simpler, lighter, truer, and something gentle happens. People around us feel it. They see us as a safe place where they too can breathe and be themselves. Peace spreads, not by theory, not by effort. It radiates from the one who has become their own home. And one day we realize peace does not come from having life arranged perfectly. Peace comes from having a heart wide enough to welcome even the things not yet arranged. When we hold that state, nothing can break us for long. No event can pull us too deep. No word can take away our worth, because we now know the way inward. We know the way home. And once someone knows the way home, they no longer fear being lost. When the mind learns to stop resisting, everything begins to arrange itself. There is a quiet turning point in the inner journey that many people overlook. It is the moment the mind stops fighting everything. Not giving up, not surrendering in defeat, but simply no longer battling what is already happening. When we stop resisting, something natural occurs. The inner energy stops spinning, and life starts rearranging itself into a softer, clearer order. For most of our life, we are trained to live in reaction. Someone says something unpleasant, and we react. Something goes off plan, and we tense up. A relationship shows signs of insecurity, and we instantly defend ourselves. Most of these reactions do not come from clarity, but from habit, the habit of protecting ourselves from some old fear. And because we react too fast and too often, we never really listen to what is happening inside us. The more the mind resists, the messier everything becomes. The quieter the mind is, the clearer everything becomes. As I observed more deeply, I saw that life never asks us to fight it. Life only asks us to cooperate with its rhythm. And that rhythm is natural, bright, and balanced. We just cannot see it because the mind is too noisy. Look at a river. When the water meets a rock, it does not get angry or push harder. It simply flows around and continues its path. It does not see the rock as an enemy, so the rock cannot stop it. Water wins because water does not resist. Humans are the same. Each time we stop resisting, we become stronger without effort. I once met a man overwhelmed by pressure in his work. He tried to control every detail, every person, every risk. He believed that if he loosened his grip, everything would fall apart. But the truth was, the tighter he held, the more things slipped away. Until one day he whispered to himself, "I cannot do everything anymore. I need to slow down." The moment he stopped fighting the battle in his mind, his work began to move more smoothly. Not because of magic, but because he stopped sending tension into the world. He started noticing solutions that panic had been hiding from him, and the people around him began cooperating more. When the mind softens, life softens. I also met a woman who tried to fix her husband, fix her family, fix things that were never hers to fix. Each day she felt exhausted because everything felt out of order. But in our conversation she saw something small, yet essential. She was not really trying to fix others. She was trying to fix the fear inside her through others. And that cannot work. When she stopped, when she no longer forced change, when she no longer tried to control what cannot be controlled. She discovered a small pocket of peace in herself. And inside that peace, her husband slowly changed too. Not because she pushed him, but because the atmosphere in the home was no longer heavy. When we do not resist, we become safer with ourselves. And when we feel safe, others respond to that frequency. The deepest lesson I learned is this: nothing in life is truly against us. It is the mind that is resisting reality. When we stop resisting, we see that life is not for us or against us. It simply flows with us, and we just need to walk with its rhythm. This does not mean ignoring problems. It does not mean staying silent in the face of what is wrong. Stopping resistance is not abandoning action. It is abandoning inner tension. When the inside is calm, we act with more wisdom, more confidence, and better timing. A heart that is battling cannot hear intuition. A heart that is quiet hears the path. When we stop resisting, something else happens. Everything becomes clear. What belongs to us arrives gently. What does not belong to us leaves quickly. There is no more tug of war, no more forcing. Everything arranges itself: relationships, work, thoughts, emotions. Like a room where you open the window, dust leaves on its own and light comes in by itself. And we stand in that simplicity and realize life was never as complicated as we thought. It was the mind that made it complicated by trying to control what it could not understand. I want to ask you something, a question meant just for you who are listening right now. Is there something in your life you have been resisting for a long time, but today, as you look deeper, you know that if you stop resisting, everything would feel much lighter? You may share a word, a sentence, or simply say, "I understand." Thank you for being here and for listening with an open heart. When I learned that light always walks one step ahead, there were moments in my life when I walked forward with a heart full of worry. I thought I was walking into darkness, into a place with no certainty, a place where I had to feel my way through. But the more I walked, the clearer I saw one truth: the light is never behind me. The light is always one step ahead, and all I need to do is follow it. I am not speaking about the light of the world. I am speaking about the inner light, the light that remains even when the mind is tired, the heart is afraid, or the situation is shifting. Many times I thought I had been left behind, but when I sat quietly, I saw something very different. It was I who had turned away from the light through worry, judgment, and the need to control. The light had not left me. I had simply stopped looking toward it. I remember one afternoon standing before a difficult decision, unsure which direction to take. I asked for a sign, but the sign did not arrive as a clear voice. It arrived as a warm, soft feeling, like a deeper breath I did not create on purpose. In that feeling I knew, just take one step. The light will open the next part of the path. From then on, I walked like someone following a thin but certain thread of brightness. When I stepped, it stretched. When I trusted, it grew stronger. When I doubted, it did not disappear, it simply waited for me to become quiet again. I realized that none of us ever walk into real darkness. We only walk into places the mind has not yet illuminated. Each time I faced something hard, the inner light asked me a gentle question. Do you want to see this through fear or through peace? And each time I chose peace. Even for a moment, a new door opened. Not with noise, but with a direction that felt less forced, less hurried, less heavy. I also learned that the light never pushes. It only invites. It never urges me to hurry. It is endlessly patient. It waits until I am ready to change the way I see. And when I change, the world changes with me. Today, when I look back over my journey, I understand something deeply. None of my steps were ever taken alone. No night was ever fully dark. In every moment, the light was present, sometimes as hope, sometimes as stillness, sometimes as a person appearing at the right time. And I know this is true for you too. If the road in front of you feels unclear today, pause, breathe slowly, and listen. The light is still there. It has never left you. It is simply waiting for you to turn toward it. When I stood inside the quiet strength within me, there came a day after years of walking through the rises and falls of my own mind, after hidden fears and silent battles only I knew about, when I finally realized that true strength is not found in tightening myself up. It is not in proving I am right. It is not in winning over anyone outside of me. True strength is an inner quiet. When I stand in that quiet, I do not need to try to be strong. I only need to be myself. For much of my life, I believed I needed to push, fight, and strive so I could earn peace and live a meaningful life. But the longer I paused, the clearer it became. Each time I stopped struggling, a soft line of light moved through my mind. That light was not loud and did not promise grand things, but it brought a steady assurance that I had never truly been alone. Looking back, I see that in every moment that seemed impossible, some unseen strength kept me from breaking. I do not know how it feels for others, but for me, that strength felt like a gentle hand placed on my shoulder in an empty room. It did not force me to walk, but reminded me that I could walk. It did not erase challenges, but showed me they had no power to define who I am. I have watched many people in different seasons of their lives find their inner strength in a similar way. Some found it after a major shock. Some after a deep loss. Some after a long, weary search for something they thought was outside themselves. But none of them found that strength by forcing it. It only appeared when they became quiet enough to hear it. I remember a man who told me he had lived his whole life afraid of failure. He chased success not out of passion, but out of fear that he was not enough. But the more he chased, the more exhausted he became. One night, sitting alone in his car after a long day, he whispered, "I just want a little peace." Nothing magical happened in that exact moment, but that sentence marked a turning point. He stopped chasing strength. He began returning to himself, and only then did his true strength appear. Looking at my own journey, I see that inner strength always begins with acceptance. Acceptance that I cannot control everything, that I am not perfect, that I have weak days. But in that acceptance, I opened a door to something new, something lighter, something brighter. True strength does not come from turning myself into an ideal version. It comes from returning to the most honest part of me, the part I once avoided, misunderstood, or thought made me weak. But when I looked closely, I saw that part was where the light enters. I learned something else. Inner strength is never separate from gentleness. They are one. When I am gentle with myself, I grow stronger. When I stop judging my weak moments, I stand steadier. When I release heavy expectations, I become lighter, and from that lightness I walk farther. I also notice that when I stand inside that quiet strength, things meant for me find me on their own. No need to grasp. No need to compete. Healthy relationships appear. Opportunities open softly. Old burdens fall away because I no longer cling to them. I do not need to raise my voice for life to hear me. When I am still, life listens. There were times I thought I had lost that strength on tired days, foggy days when even prayer would not form into words. But every time I sat with myself again, I saw that the strength had never left. It had only been covered by the noise of worry. And each time I took a single deep breath, the strength returned gentle as the first time. Today, standing near the end of this chapter, I want to tell you something I took many years to understand. The strength within you is larger than any circumstance, any memory, any fear you have carried. It is not in the future. It is not in other people. It is right where you are sitting, breathing, listening. And you do not need to become someone else to touch it. You only need to return to yourself. If there are moments when you feel weak, it does not mean you lost your strength. It only means your strength is moving closer. If there are moments you feel lost, it does not mean you chose the wrong path. It only means you are learning to see with your inner eyes. And if there are moments you feel afraid, know this: the quiet strength of your soul is always behind you, waiting for you to turn back to it. I close this part with deep gratitude, because this journey is not just something I am telling. It is what shaped me, repaired me, and lifted me in moments when I thought I could no longer stand. And I believe, with all sincerity, that this same strength is waiting for you to recognize it. Once you step into the place of quiet strength within you, nothing in this world can take your peace away.